Good afternoon. Welcome to the President's live briefing. We have about 150 people who are registered to join us this afternoon. And with that, I will turn it over to.
Thank you, Yoshanda. Good afternoon. This week we had the Derek Chauvin trial ending with a guilty verdict. To paraphrase Minnesota's Attorney General, Keith Ellison, something I put in my communication right after that verdict. We can't really say that it's justice, but we can say that it's accountability. And the work is really ahead in terms of really addressing the justice question and policing and all the other underlying issues. But at least I think we all must have had a moment, an emotional moment, and a moment of at least brief relief. Today's Earth Day. Our inaugurational Bronx Environmental Summit had more than 300 attendees at the end of March. It was really a huge success. We have a city bike program that is in its final stages of planning, and it's going to be having stations around Lehman College. We're acting to reduce climate change. We're doing what we can at Lehman College. We've taken many steps in the past. We're going to take many more in the future. All those steps really are the same steps that we take to build a just and equitable society. They're all linked. We have other sustainability projects that are coming to Lehman College, really significant ones that you'll be hearing about as they get a little further along. Today, President Biden announced a new aggressive climate goal that we must meet as a nation. The goal is to cut emissions to 50% below what they were in 2005 by the year 2030. So we have a 90 by 30 goal at Lehman. And now we also need to have a minus 50 by 30 goal that goes along with that. Shifting gears, the COVID pandemic is still very much with us. Lehman is now a vaccination site. Get vaccinated. As of last night, 43% of New Yorkers have had at least the first shot, and close to 30% have completed their vaccination series. Vaccination protects you. Like, that's very important to remember. Vaccination protects you. How well does it protect you? There's still a chance you can become infected after you've had a vaccination. It's called a breakthrough infection. It's very, very rare. As of about 2 days ago, the CDC reported fewer than 6,000 such cases out of 84 million vaccinated persons. Another way to look at that are two studies that came out of health delivery systems, one in Texas and Austin, and one that was UT Southwestern in Dallas, not Austin, in Dallas. And one was in San Diego and Los Angeles. In the Dallas Health Center, where over 8,000 healthcare workers were vaccinated, there were only 4 breakthrough cases. None of those people got sick, but their detection was infected with testing. In California, in those 2 centers, out of 15,000 vaccinated healthcare workers, only 7 had a breakthrough infection, positive test result. And again, nobody seriously ill. So the vaccinations work and they protect you. Those healthcare systems are a pretty good test, right? Because many of those individuals are being exposed at a much higher level to infected individuals. And yet they're not getting infected, and they're certainly not getting sick. So it's very important to keep that in mind as we go into the fall and into the next academic year, that it may not always be possible to know what's the vaccination state of those around us. But if we are vaccinated, we're protected. And we're wearing a mask. Others are wearing masks, and we've been vaccinated. We really don't have concerns. We are going to be fine. And speaking of the fall term, first of all, I think it's always just important to acknowledge how challenging all of this has been for everyone, students, faculty, and staff. Um, it's been a huge strain, and it continues to be a huge strain. And I think the transition back in person will really not be different from that. It's going to be more complex logistically and in other ways. But we miss being in person. We miss the contact with each other. I'm sure you do. I really do. I know students do. And so we want to make every effort we can to get back in person to the greatest degree that we can safely do that. I think is going to be important for us to, as I said, get vaccinated. That's now our most important step. It's going to be important also to keep wearing masks in everywhere where we're in contact and on campus all the time. So having done those steps, I think the thing we have to then do is not let ourselves be dominated by fear, because we're going to have concerns no matter what our rational side of our minds is telling us. We will have concerns. I think that's natural, but we can't let fear be the thing then that drives what we do, because that will interfere with our being our best and doing the best that we can. So we're learning from other places now as we prepare for the fall. Other colleges and universities across the country have been more open than we have through this term that we're in, and have been using a lot of the methods and technologies that we'll be using in the fall. And so we're learning from them. At the same time, we're going to have to be experimental and plan to learn from our own experiences as we go into the fall. We're going to find that some of the things will work really well for us, others will not. I think every college is really pretty distinct in that way. So one of the things that's really topmost in our minds is providing support for faculty, staff, and students as we make this move back onto campus. One of the major ways that we're doing that in terms of the instructional part of what we do is to develop high flex classrooms. And you've heard about these already. Our target is to have 42 classrooms that will become high flex. 20 of those are going to be that way through the use of mobile carts, which will have Logitech's Meetup system on them. It's an all-in-one video conferencing system. It will work with Zoom. It will work with Teams. It will have a computer and a monitor so the instructor can view remote students. We're going to do an additional 20 tripod mounted Logitech Meetup systems for other classrooms, and we'll build upon existing technology. 2 high flex classrooms will be upgraded for larger implementation of classrooms across the campus. And those classrooms are going to have high brightness projectors, faculty lecturing with a PC with a touch screen, additional monitors so that students or guests can be observed during the session. This beamforming microphones that are ceiling mounted that are able to track conversation and sound when individuals are speaking throughout the classroom. 2 cameras and as I said, some more support from MIGDIO's office, as well as a cadre of students who are being trained to be available and be on tap to support faculty using these systems. So we will have a couple of these rooms set up early on for training so that faculty can come in late summer and get some experience with these systems before the fall term begins. Most of our courses are still scheduled to be online, but we have a number of in-person, and we have quite a few hybrid courses. Those hybrid courses particularly are going to be candidates for using these high flex systems. And I'm going to, strongly encourage faculty to take advantage of that. And despite a natural kind of trepidation about using them because of their newness, encourage you to do it, because I think that it will be important for us to become familiar with how to use these systems. They're systems that we're going to be using well beyond the time that we're fully back in person on campus, because they really do expand what we can do. They're going to expand what we're able to offer students. So it increases the options for students, but also, if you think about it, our ability to have meetings, to reach more of us, the faculty and staff, uh, that are having meetings and need to interact, when in the past we might not have been able to have everybody involved for various reasons. We can use these systems very effective that way. And also, when we're having meetings like we had just had, the 2-day session that we had for our climate summit, our environmental summit, um, using this technology going forward really expands who can participate and expands our reach. So I think it's important to use this moment that we're in to learn these systems, to become familiar with them, and not be afraid to have things happen that aren't expected, but know that there will be support there, and there'll be the possibility of learning from what happens, and getting more and more competent with these systems. So with that, I'd like to turn to Provost Nwosu for a few words.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good afternoon, everyone. I want to just follow up on the President's comment regarding a fall 21 reopening, and really to thank everyone for working on the schedule that we now have in place. And developing that schedule took quite some time because they took into account many of the things that the President talked about. As everyone recalls, we did do a campus readiness survey. The information gleaned from that survey also informed the work from our chairs, our deans, in developing the schedule. Enrollment management has also worked on really putting this in place. And next week, the 28th of February, we will begin registration formally for fall. We're quite a little behind compared to other CUNY colleges, but we wanted to get this right, and we believe we have those right as we make progress. There is a committee that VP Rotolo is chairing that is also working on finessing many of the complex issues and logistics related to rooming of these classrooms, and certainly many of the other issues the President referenced. And so that work continues. It's not stopped. While registration begins next week, we will continue to finesse the schedule, the classrooms, and certainly we will also begin the work we began over the last 1 year in providing professional development opportunities to our faculty on how to teach in these modalities. The President talked about the high flex piece. There is a series of workshops being put together by the Office of Online Education on how to actually design high flex classes. So there is a technical piece that is being provided by IT, but there's also the one that deals with pedagogy. And so that workshop, I want to encourage folks to participate in that. And Dr. Olena Zatko is working very closely with IT in structuring those workshops. And it will be very, very helpful for those who will be teaching in that high flex modality to take advantage of the opportunities that we will be providing beginning next month, May. And these workshops actually will continue into the fall. And we will also be accelerating many of the workshops we provided over the last several months. We will continue to provide those for faculty who may need additional refresher, or others that we are bringing in as new colleagues so that they can also take advantage of these opportunities. We're also doing the same for our students as well. And so those workshops will be in place similar to what we did last year. There is a new initiative thanks to the president and certainly VP Rotolo and the central office. And thanks again to the CRISA funds that we are receiving. We will be launching this particular summer. It's called the Learning Recovery Project. And that particular project will focus on incoming freshman population, and it will be really somewhat of a 5-week summer bridge program that prepares them as they begin to think of coming to the college. So stay tuned on that. We will be providing additional information. That project is led through Enrollment Management Office, Dr. Althea Ford, Eileen Warren, and certainly Dean Mills and VP Sarmiento coordinating this important work that will also enhance our enrollment. And so I want to thank everyone for the work that's been done thus far. The work remains as we get ready to return back to the campus in fall. One final point I will make just to the point that the president noted, 1/3 of the classes that we have in the schedule thus far is a combination of in-person and hybrid modalities. And so again, that's commendable to our colleagues for working very hard to get us to where we are. Mr. President, back to you.
Thank you, Provost Nwosu. So Vice President Rotolo, we'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, President Lemons. Good afternoon, everyone, and happy Earth Day. And I was just thinking about Earth Day, and this marks the second Earth Day where we have not been on campus to celebrate, which is very sad to me, very, very sad. I want to give a brief update on the Joint Return to Campus Committee. The committee's met twice. We've now broken into separate groups to begin the work to both update and amend our existing approved plan. And our goal is to actually have this work completed by the end of May. And as we move forward, I will continue to keep the community informed. I'd also like to add some additional information to some of the update items that the president had mentioned earlier. The City Bike Program will locate bicycles on Bedford Park Boulevard between Gate 8 and Gate 7, and also on Goulden Avenue by Carmen Hall, close to Gate 1. The Lehman vaccination site is opened. It opened last Friday. Right now, it is open to walk-ins, persons 50 years of age and older. You do not need an appointment. You can walk in. Everyone else at this time can make an appointment at the New York City scheduling site, which is posted on our webpage. The city has what they're calling set-aside appointments for Lehman employees. We are in the process of having 3 authorized schedulers trained in using the system, and we expect to go live next week so that you can actually schedule your appointment through Lehman College, and you will get a set-aside appointment. You will not have to wait in the queue for an appointment to become available through the regular process. Then the hope is after a few weeks of that, we'll be able to make the same accommodations for students as well, but we'll keep you informed on that. To kick off the session, the question and answer session, there were a few questions that had come in earlier that I'd like to answer right now, and then I'll turn it back to the president to begin answering questions from you all. So one of the first questions is, have additional hand sanitizing stations been added to every floor of every building? The simple answer is yes. We've ordered many, many more. We're continuing to order many more so that we can make sure that they are in place everywhere. We've ordered supplies to keep them fully stocked. And in addition, there's many other things we're doing to make as many things on campus touchless as possible. We're adding no-touch soap dispensers in bathrooms, and where they don't exist, we're replacing manual faucets and flushometers with automatic ones, so that we want our bathrooms to be fully touch-free. Next question, what has been done to eliminate and sanitize common touch surfaces such as doorknobs, water fountains, faucets, elevator buttons, vending machines, etc.? First, I should let you know there's not many people on campus that are actually using these things, but we have actually since before we left campus. You know, from probably February of 2020, we have been regularly cleaning and disinfecting all high-touch surfaces in all buildings. And we will continue to follow the CDC guidelines in this regard. You know, on April 5th, the CDC issued new guidelines advising that the risk of infection from touching surfaces is low. The new guidelines state that daily cleaning is adequate if there is not an exposure or confirmed positive infection. And we will be following CDC guidelines. OSHA recommends providing disposable disinfecting wipes for workers to wipe down commonly used surfaces. And we have been stocking, and we have ample supplies, and we'll continue ordering and supplying disinfecting wipes to all occupied spaces. The next question, how often will there be cleaning or sanitizing in office areas? First, I should let you know that we're following current CDC protocols regarding numbers of people in occupied spaces. So custodians are not going into occupied spaces. They're actually going in and doing the cleaning after the space is occupied. And we will continue to follow the guidelines and implement the protocols established by the CDC in this regard. We will also be providing disposable disinfecting wipes for staff to be able to wipe down surfaces in their areas as well. Final question that came in, will the vents be cleaned and verified by OSHA? So we have an established procedure which is outlined in the campus's approved return to campus plan for mechanical systems in buildings that follows both the CDC and the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning Engineers, which people commonly know as ASHRAE, recommendations and guidelines. We've inspected all mechanical equipment to verify proper operation. Where necessary, we've ordered parts and made repairs, or we've contracted with outside vendors to do repairs that were beyond our capability. We have thoroughly cleaned and disinfected air handling unit coils and inside the units themselves before changing all units to MERV 13 filters, and we will do the same at each filter change throughout the use. We've kept the systems running in buildings even if they're not occupied. We have opened outside air dampers on all of our systems to allow maximum outside air into the HVAC systems. We have also investigated other systems that can be installed to further purify and increase air quality, and we're obtaining prices on some of those systems. But we haven't finalized yet what we're doing because we're looking at the available options. I'm not aware that OSHA verifies vent cleaning. OSHA's guidance, when I looked it up for mitigating and preventing the spread of COVID-19 in the workplace for ventilation, refers you back to the CDC recommendations for ventilation, which the CDC recommendations incorporate the ASHRAE guidelines. So we're following both of those very carefully. And in all cases, both stress bringing in as much outside air as possible through the opening of the dampers in the system and opening in windows in spaces. So, and also ensuring that the systems operate properly and are properly maintained, and to increase filtration, which we have done through the MERV 13. And now I'm going to turn it back to the president for the question and answer session. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice President Rotolo. One of the things that is behind a number of those answers just highlights again the way what we understand has evolved. As more data has come in, as more research has been done, we've learned a lot. And we were hyper vigilant about cleaning early on and through most of this, because that was really what the CDC was saying, and we were really abiding by that. Now the research is showing this is primarily a respiratory transmitted, air transmitted virus, and that there's very, very little transmission on surfaces. So that's something we've learned. And, we're adapting because we've got to put our resources in the places where it's effective. And there was an article in the Atlantic, they called it, they used the term, what did they call it? They called it hygienic theater. So, no doubt for a long time, there's going to be probably hyper concern about cleaning. But the fact is that that concern really needs to go elsewhere. The places where, you know, we now understand more are where we need to focus. So that's what we're going to do. And I really feel like that's what we've done all along, and we'll continue to do that. There's a question, and this might come back to you, Vice President Rotolo, but there was a question that came in earlier, and a form of that's posted here, which is, are we going to, that question was more about whether we're documenting the state of vaccination of faculty and staff. And the question though is, are we going to keep some kind of a log in terms of who's vaccinated, who's not? And you can add to what I'm about to say, but at this point, no, we're not doing that. Vaccination at this point, as you know, is not mandated by the state, which really sets our guidelines for all state employees. We're not going to mandate something that the state does not mandate. So there's no mandate, but we're also not at this point setting up to keep a record.
No, we're not. But people can voluntarily let us know if they've been vaccinated. We just can't ask.
Yeah, we will not ask.
We will not ask.
Yeah, that's right. So there's a question, and Provost, also I'm going to send this one in your direction. There has been some kind of ongoing discussion around the use of respondus and why it is that, although it's available to us to use this term, it's not available to us to use this term for any examinations that are producing grades that are used for a final grade. Do you want to respond to that? You know, why is it that our legal counsel is telling us that this term, we can't use respondus for official graded exams?
Thank you, President Lemons. We can't, indeed, when the request came from Central that we explore whether we want to, we did engage our deans, and suddenly based on their own judgment that this was not the right tool for us at this time, then we made a determination that we would not actually be utilizing this. Certainly, the General Counsel was also involved in those conversations. What I've learned from our deans is that they are utilizing other mechanisms. There are issues of integrity at this point, but also utilizing other mechanisms that we have to be able to address questions in the classroom. Is that the best approach? Not necessarily, but at this point, that's what we are doing. And if at some point there is a better tool that's out there, then we would certainly be engaging the central office to see if we use that. But there's some other institutions that are. It's not that that's not something we made a decision to use.
And going forward into the next term, if it's in the syllabus, informing students that it will be used, then it can be used.
That is very correct. So long as the students agree that they know ahead of time that this is a tool that the faculty member can use. And I think that's where the General Counsel actually comes in as well.
Yeah, that's right.
If it is what the students have information about early on, then that's okay. But we just can't spring this on them mid-course the semester.
Yeah.
That's another part of this.
But I think from the faculty point of view, this does seem to be a good tool, ensuring that students have to stay focused on the exam and can't go off to other sites and utilize other resources in an exam. So I imagine that from the viewpoint of faculty members, that could lessen concerns about the validity of exam taking.
That is correct. And as we return again to in-person, then that concern becomes more minimized. But so long as students know that this is something that will be used, certainly there won't be any questions in that regard.
So another question that we have what supports are being provided to students who are living in Lehman's dorm regarding COVID-19 guidelines? I think maybe Vice President Rotolo, you can probably respond to that question.
Yeah, so the protocols and the COVID guidelines are included in our return to campus plan. Some of the things that have been implemented is double occupancy rooms have been converted to single occupancy during the pandemic, waiting for other guidelines. There has been ongoing periodic testing for COVID of residents in the housing. There is a requirement for set aside rooms for infected persons to be isolated. Those rooms have been set inside. They've increased cleaning. And again, a number of the other protocols are listed in our return to campus plan in the section under student housing.
Thank you. The question about high flex classes, do you mean that there will be a mix of some remote students and in-person students? As in we'll be able to choose if we're comfortable with coming in. Well, let's start with the last part of that question first, about choosing based on comfort coming in. My assumption, and I think this is pretty consistent with what I've said for some time now about the fall, is my assumption is that faculty will be coming into campus. There can be exceptions to that for faculty members who can't be vaccinated for medical or other reasons, because there are exceptions, legitimate exceptions to vaccination, we know. But otherwise, the assumption is that faculty can come in and should be expected to come into campus. So it's not a matter of I don't really choose to or wish to. The expectation is that faculty will come to campus, but that doesn't mean the expectation is that they're going to be in a full classroom of students. When they come in and they're with students, they'll be in a classroom with students that can safely be in that room with given the spacing that we need in that particular classroom. So with most of our classrooms, that's going to mean that those classes will probably not have all the students in there at one time. So the high flex approach, usually I think as it's really being deployed now across the country and as it's really understood, is that you have some students in class, you have some students who are remote, but they're in the same session with you. So it's a synchronous session, and you really have all the students there in one of those modes or the other. Sure, there are a lot of variations on that theme could be tried, but that's kind of the basic model of a high flex classroom as I understand it. So next question is a very broad question. What's the status of the credit, no credit policy? So I think the simplest answer to that question is that although we know that the Lehman College Senate approved a credit, no credit policy, what we have found as we have explored that further is that we are unable to implement that policy as it was approved because the Board of Trustees of the university, which ultimately has to approve all curriculum changes, and this is in that category, did not extend its blanket credit, no credit option beyond the term that we finished in the fall. There was even some question going into the fall, as you recall, about whether they would allow extension of that from the summer and the previous spring into the fall, but they did. But they've been basically the understanding that we've come to is that they did not extend it for this term, and therefore, absent their action, individual campuses are not able to implement their own non-credit or credit, non-credit blanket policies for their curriculum. So I do understand that the University Student Senate, I believe in late March, passed a resolution also advocating a credit, no credit policy for the university. And it is my understanding they plan to present that to CAPRA, which is the subcommittee of the board that deals with curriculum. And that would be in early May. So I don't expect that the board will change its mind on that. I'd be very surprised if they will, but I do understand that the University Student Senate has presented that resolution for consideration by that committee. So I know that it's very disappointing for particularly students who were very concerned about having that credit, no credit option. And, we heard that in very clear ways in the Senate session that we had at the beginning of the month. So I know that it's disappointing to learn that in fact, we're not able to implement that, but that's the situation that we're in at the moment with credit, no credit. And although it's possible that the board could act, I really do not expect that they will act to change that. Provost, I don't know if there's anything more you want to add to that.
Yes, I do know that that a number of our students are anxious about the memo that came out, and certainly the explanation you have provided. What I want to very much underscore is that we are working aggressively to provide them with guidelines consistent with the memo that you sent out about the withdrawal deadline. There's this May 17th withdrawal deadline that they're very much anxious about. And so we're launching a very aggressive communication program to provide guidelines and guidance to them on what they need to do. That will begin on May 3rd, consistent with the memo that you also sent out. We're planning actually to send out a text message perhaps later today or tomorrow to students, just so that we keep them in the loop in terms of next steps. We're working to develop a new end of semester website that would help students in terms of navigating the process. We've also talked about a decision tree to guide them in making decisions regarding withdrawal within a 24/7 cycle. There is also a dedicated withdrawal period set of advisors that we are providing them. All of that information will be in this communication that will get to them. And then there's also the need for them to really seek the advice of a faculty advisor, staff advisor before they make any determinations. So essentially, to be patient, we are working on all of these so that that information will be in the communication we send to them. I want to encourage them to stay within their classes, continue to do their best, and that we will be working with them as they make that final decision. So mindful of the anxiety, just to reassure them that we will be getting to them. But there will be text messaging that will follow your message as well, so that they know the specific things to expect once, and to calm them down as well as we work through with them on this. So that's about what I wanted to share.
Thank you. Yeah, I think we understood whether there was a credit, no credit policy or wasn't one, that there was a lot of this communication that would be needed at the end of the term, just because of the withdrawal date is the 17th of May, which is later. I mean, it was extended, of course, last term as well, but students are still not necessarily all aware of that, and also just aware of what they should do in light of that. So I think regardless of whether there had been a credit, no credit policy, that we understood that was something that would really need to be done.
That's correct.
So wait a few minutes here and see if we have some other questions that come up. So, Provost, this is a good question. Is it likely the new withdrawal date will become permanent? That is putting it at the very end of the term.
My understanding is that the answer is yes. It's permanent. That's what was approved by the board as well, and so that's yes, that's correct.
So, question about sports teams. Are there updates on sports teams? As we know, we didn't have a season this spring. Vice President Rotolo, can you give us any insight into that, or Provost Nwosu?
And VP Rotolo can add to this as well. We did submit a return to sports plan to the central office that we are waiting on, and so some of the we will see where that goes in terms of that. And VP Rotolo, you might want to speak to that as well.
What I've been told by Central is that the intention is to have fall sports. What that will look like, there's a draft plan they've put together that will actually outline what that will look like. I would assume, and again, we're making plans for August and September now in April, when things are still haven't been updated to new guidelines, but I'm sure most of it will actually occur outdoors.
And then there's a question about plans for staff returning to campus. And, I suppose that is a little bit parallel to what we've been talking about in terms of instruction. And, again, Vice President Rotolo, you can follow up on this, but I think that, this is a discussion that is just beginning to happen around the university at the central office. And while I can't really say anything specific because there isn't anything specific to say, but one of the discussions that I'm hearing in a lot of places at the other campuses, central office, is a discussion around how our normal patterns might be altered somewhat as we begin to come back on campus. And we don't know yet what that will be. We know that there will be a new work at home policy that's probably going to evolve still. But there will be something probably different about the way we're doing it. I would expect that, I would hope that actually, that there is something different about it. Because I think some of the things that we've learned in working entirely remotely can really help us going forward. So Vice President Rotolo, do you have more to say about plans for staff coming back?
Well, our approved plan does include plans for staff coming back and really focuses around shared office space and ensuring that occupancy is reduced in shared office spaces, and leaves it up really to the director to work that all out. It also leaves it up to the director to work out what areas are actually functioning very well remotely, and there are many that are functioning very well remotely, and what areas are not functioning so well remotely or cannot function remotely and must be done on campus. So those would go into the consideration about who will be coming back. In other words, let me give an example. The mailroom can't function remotely. The mail comes to the college, has to be sorted in the mailroom and then distributed around the college. And that's true for a lot of different operations, not just those types, but office operations as well. So there is one subcommittee of the Joint Return to Campus Committee that will be focused on administrative staff and their return. And as that plan evolves further, or the amendment to our plan evolves further, we'll provide more information to the group. Also, CUNY has issued amended guidelines which addresses staff and addresses continuing remote work as well. So that will be incorporated into our plan. And there, as you mentioned, President Lemons, there will be guidelines coming out of CUNY Central HR about remote work policy.
Thank you.
I do want to add President Lemons to VP Rotolo's point as well. As part of our planning, even as we were engaged with the instructional part of this, we did ask the administrative units to submit return to work plans. They did. And if you look at those plans, you will see staggered alternate work schedules. Part of it is actually taking into account social distancing as well. And so there are draft plans that are in place that committee that Rene talked about will be looking at, and then we'll make recommendations that would help inform the final plan that or the updated plan that goes back to CUNY. As you know, we have a reopening plan we used in fall. We're essentially updating that one for the fall 2021 semester.
Great. Thank you. There was a follow-up question about vaccination and whether supervisors can ask those they supervise about their state of vaccination. And I think the answer to that is no, not at this point. The only time that would become appropriate, and that would be managed by HR, is if vaccination became mandatory. If that became the policy, that would change that. But at this point, knowledge of who is or isn't vaccinated is strictly a voluntary matter. I can tell you that I am, and I feel pretty great about it. But even though I've been vaccinated for about 2 months. Last week I got this cold and I got a cough, and I thought, oh no, here goes breakthrough. So I went and got a COVID test because I didn't want to. I wasn't really worried about myself. I didn't want to expose anybody else, even though I'm wearing a mask. I just didn't want to take any chances. But it was negative. So anyway, if you haven't been vaccinated, you really need to. That sense of freedom is really pretty amazing after 14 months.
Mr. President, I also want to say that I did do both of them as well. And like everyone, there were concerns, but you finally do go. And then you realize, well, it's not that fear actually. So tomorrow makes it my 2 weeks after the second one. And I felt very, very good with both of them. Folks respond differently, but at least from what I've seen, you're okay with that. And there's a sense of relief that I felt, and a weight off my shoulders. So I'm fine, and I'm excited and look forward to returning back and encourage others to do the same as well.
And I'll also report that it's been about a month since my second vaccination, and I too feel a huge weight has been lifted off my shoulders. I continue to wear my mask when I'm out, but I feel comfortable not wearing it when I'm with my family. And for those of you who know me, know my daughter's a nurse and she's working with COVID patients. And I wasn't able to see her for about 6 months. We've lived separately. So finally, when I finished my second vaccine 2 weeks later, I was able to see her again and spend time with her. So I'm very happy about it.
Yeah, that's the stuff that is great, that we're going to get back. And, we know we've been missing it, but boy, it is amazing when you can finally make those in-person connections again. Pretty fantastic. Vice President Rotolo, who would, in terms of volunteering information about our vaccination state, how are we going to do that? How are we going to keep track of that?
Should always go to HR. It's personal information. It should go to HR.
Okay, great. So this is a question for you, Provost Nwosu. Can the modality that students currently see in the fall 21 course listing on CUNY First, could that potentially change um, after next week?
Not necessarily, and I say that because there's been some consistency with what we have there in terms of that 33% I mentioned earlier. But I want to caveat that with this particular remark, because I know that the committee that VP Rotolo is working with, or is chairing, is also looking at rooming arrangements for those courses. So there may be minor changes here and there, but my sense is that what we have is set. So that's what we're working with, and it stayed steady really over the last several months of developing the schedule. It's, and so I doubt that there will be, but I don't want to say that there might not be. There's always change going to occur as you develop schedules. So that we will share that with our community. So we have something there that they can work with, and then we keep refining that as the semester, as we get closer to the semester. So that's, schedules are never final. There are things that happen, until the last minute you're making changes. So
Well, I think that we started with the mindset as we began scheduling that we'd need some flexibility because there's still a lot we didn't know about the fall, and there still is a lot we don't know about the fall.
Yeah, and I'll add to that, there could be factors outside of our control that force us to change, just as they did when we were forced to leave campus. So those are the things that we can't predict or we can plan for. I mean, we've done it already. As I've said to people leaving, we've done it well. We know how to do it. We could do it again easily. It's the coming back that's a little more difficult for us now because we haven't done it yet.
Well, we have no other questions that have come in. We're pretty close to the end of our hour. So I think that we'll draw this to a close. Thank you all for coming. We've had a really good attendance at these sessions. This is no exception. It's really great to have the participation that we've had in these sessions. Thank you, Vice President Rotolo. Thank you, Provost Nwosu, for being here, as you usually are, to take questions, and which I really appreciate, and I'm sure everyone else does as well. So again, I want to thank everyone, faculty, staff, and students, for what you've been doing for all these months. And we're well past the year's mark in dealing with this pandemic. And I know that there's just been a lot of extraordinary effort that's been made. And I know we'll continue to do that because that's what's going to be needed. But I'm pretty confident that that's where we'll be. We're all going to be there doing what we can. So thank you very much. And with that, have a good evening. And when we get to it after tomorrow, have a good weekend.